This is a real-life story. All names are being completely removed for serious security concerns and deeply personal reasons. The individual involved is still in a vulnerable situation. Locations remain as they truly occurred. Imagine spending 20 years destroying families, and then watching the same system you serve come for your own child. What would you do if the pen in your hand was suddenly pointed at the person you loved most in this world? Stay, because what this man went through, and what God did in the middle of it, will shatter you and put you back together at the same time. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. Let us build a praying family across every nation. We need each other more than we know. For 20 years, I was the most feared man in the courtroom. I am a 52-year-old man, and I am telling you this story from a place of safety that I do not take for granted for even one single day. In 2016, I was a judge of the Islamic court in Tehran. My reputation was iron. My sentences were final. My faith, I believed, was unshakable. Every time my gavel struck that bench, I told myself I was serving God. I told myself I was protecting the truth. I was wrong. Terribly, tragically wrong. Over 2 decades, I signed documents that sent more than 300 people to prison. Almost all of them were Christians. I remember their faces more than they probably remember mine. There was a young pastor in his early 30s, brought in one cold winter morning in 2016, handcuffed, charged with secretly baptizing people and keeping Christian books. I read his charges aloud with all the authority I had built over the years. 15 years. Maximum security. When the gavel fell, he looked at me, not with anger, not with fear, but with something I could not name. Then he smiled. Before the guards pulled him away, he told me something that I dismissed immediately but could never actually forget. He said that God loved me. He said he was praying for me. His voice was so calm, so certain, that it disturbed something deep inside me, though I buried that disturbance the moment I walked out of the courtroom. Then there was an elderly woman, over 60 years old, a grandmother. Police found dozens of Bibles hidden in her small apartment in Mashhad, Iran's holiest city. During questioning, I looked her in the eye and asked if she regretted what she had done. I expected tears. I expected begging. Instead, she told me quietly that Jesus was worth more than her freedom. She told me he was worth more than watching her grandchildren grow. She told me she would do it all again without hesitation. I signed her 12-year sentence without my hand trembling once. I thought I was pleasing God. I was blind. Completely, terrifyingly blind. My life at home in Tehran was perfectly ordered. My wife prepared black tea every morning. My son, my only son, 24 years old, studying at university, sat with us at dinner and talked about his future. I was proud of him. I thought I knew him completely. I did not know he had been secretly reading a Bible for 6 months. April 7th, 2016. A Thursday. The sky over Tehran was gray and heavy. I was at my desk on the 4th floor of the courthouse, reviewing documents for the following week, a cup of warm tea to my right, my pen in my hand, everything completely normal. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end was cold and professional. He identified himself as an officer from the Department of Moral Security. He told me that my son had been arrested that morning at a cafe. They found a complete Bible in his bag. He had confessed immediately, without any pressure. He told them he had believed in Jesus for months. He told them he had already shared his faith with classmates. The phone nearly fell from my hand. I left my office without closing the door. I left without my briefcase. I ran down the stairs and drove through Tehran's impossible traffic with shaking hands, telling myself over and over that there had been a mistake. But there was no mistake. My wife called me crying, telling me that 6 armed men had come to our home in 2 black vans. They broke open our son's bedroom door. They threw drawers on the floor, scattered his clothes everywhere, and found the Bible hidden at the back of his wardrobe. They took him away in handcuffs. The neighbors all saw it. When I finally arrived at the detention center, the same facility where I had sent hundreds of people, I was not a judge anymore. I was just a broken father. They gave me 5 minutes with him. The room was small and cold. A metal table bolted to the floor. 2 hard chairs. A security camera blinking red in the corner. They brought my son in wearing a gray prison uniform that was too big for his shoulders. His face was pale. His eyes were red from crying. But when he looked at me, the same peace appeared on his face that I had seen on every Christian I had ever condemned. That impossible, inexplicable peace. He sat across from me, and the silence between us was the heaviest thing I have ever felt. I finally asked him what he had done. I asked him if he understood how serious this was. He looked me straight in the eyes and told me he had found the truth. He told me Jesus was real. He told me he had experienced a love he had never known before, and that he could not deny it. not even to save himself. Then he told me something that cut through every wall I had ever built. He said he had watched me judge Christians for 20 years. He asked me if I had ever once stopped to wonder why they all chose prison over denying Jesus. He said it was because Jesus was worth more than everything, more than freedom, more than life itself. Those were the same words the elderly grandmother had used, the same words a young pastor had used, words I had always called fanaticism. But now they were coming from my own son's mouth, and they were destroying me from the inside. The guard signaled that time was up. As they led him toward the metal door, he turned back and told me he loved me. He said he prayed for me every single day. He asked God to help me find what he had found. The door slammed shut. I stood alone in that freezing room, and Judge, feared, powerful, 20-year career, collapsed completely. I cried like a child who had lost everything. Because I had. The trial was brief and devastating. My son confessed everything without hesitation. He told the court he would do it all again. The prosecutor, a young and ambitious man I knew well, demanded the maximum penalty. My colleague on the bench, a man I had worked beside for over a decade, a man who had known my son since he was small, read the sentence. 15 years, with a mandatory Supreme Court review that could escalate it to death. Then the worst moment of my life arrived. I was summoned to the Ministry of Intelligence. A man in a dark suit, cold eyes, placed a folder in front of me. Inside was an updated order from the Supreme Court. My son's sentence had been reviewed. The new sentence was death by hanging, 11 days away. Then the man explained that protocol required me, as a court employee related to the accused, to sign an acknowledgement of the sentence. He was asking me to sign my own son's death warrant. He told me that if I refused, I would be charged with obstruction and complicity with apostasy. He told me that if I refused, we would both be condemned. He placed a black pen on top of the document and told me it was just a formality, that my signature changed nothing, that my son was already condemned by the Supreme Court. He told me survival was a victory. I picked up that pen. My hand trembled. Cold sweat ran down my back. And I signed my name. One tear fell onto the paper and left a small dark stain in the corner. I could not go home. I could not face my wife. I drove to the empty courthouse and sat in the dark on the cold concrete floor of my office, my back against 20 years of law books. I did not turn on the lights. I deserved the darkness. And then, in that total destruction, I broke completely. I spoke into the dark, not a ritual prayer, not memorized Arabic, just a raw, desperate word of a destroyed man. I asked God, if he was really there, to show me. I asked how the Christians I had condemned could smile when facing prison. I said that if there was forgiveness for a man who had just signed his own child's death warrant, I needed to know. I said I could not save myself. I had tried to be righteous for 52 years and had only caused pain. What happened next, I cannot fully explain with words. A presence filled that dark room. Not a voice I heard with my ears. Something deeper. Something that resonated inside my chest like a bell being struck. I understood, not through sound but through something I can only call my spirit, that I was completely forgiven, that every unjust sentence, every destroyed family, every life I had broken, it had all been carried and paid for on the cross. That I was not the judge anymore. I was the son, loved, forgiven, found. I found a Bible in my drawer, confiscated years ago as evidence and never returned. I opened it and read until the sun rose over Tehran. 9 days later, my wife called me early in the morning. Our son had called her. 2 unknown guards had come to his cell the night before with a release order. They had taken him quietly to the airport and put him on a plane. He was calling from Istanbul, Turkey. He was free. He was alive. No one in the judicial system could explain it. His case file still showed an active death sentence. He should have been in a cell. Instead, he was free. I knew immediately what had happened. God had opened the doors. 6 days after that, officers came to my home and arrested me, charged with complicity in an escape and suspicion of apostasy. They put me in a cell 2 meters by 3 meters, concrete walls, a thin blanket on a hard floor, a single small window letting in a strip of gray light. But inside my heart, light. Over the following months in that cell, I shared my faith with other prisoners. 2 of them gave their lives to Jesus. A young guard began sliding Christian materials under my door. He too eventually believed. After months of imprisonment, with help from 2 guards who had quietly come to faith, I escaped under the cover of night. We traveled over 300 kilometers to the Turkish border, crossing mountains on foot. My body gave out more than once. I prayed for strength each time and kept moving. I arrived in Istanbul and knocked on a door. My son opened it. We held each other and wept until we had no tears left. My wife arrived 8 months later. She too found Jesus. Today, I wash dishes to support our family. My son translates Christian materials. My wife cooks for other refugees. And I lead a small church of over 100 Iranian refugees in Istanbul. I have baptized more than 100 people with my own hands, hands that once signed sentences of condemnation. God does not waste pain. He redeems it. To every Christian reading or watching this, please stop and pray right now for the believers sitting in cells across Iran, across the Middle East, across every nation where faith in Jesus carries a death sentence. They are real people. They are paying a real price. Your prayer is not small. It reaches heaven. And if something in this story has touched a place inside you that you cannot explain, pray this simple prayer right now. Jesus, I believe you are real. I believe you love me. Forgive everything I have done wrong. Come into my heart and change me the way you changed this man. I give you my life. Amen. If you prayed that, your life just changed forever. Find a Bible. Find a safe community of believers. You are not alone. Please share this story. Someone you know is searching and needs to hear that God transforms even the most hardened heart. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected with His family across the nations. Every share plants a seed somewhere that only God can see.